The courtroom lights felt hotter than usual. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled the gallery seats with eyes too alert for what was supposed to be a procedural hearing. Karoline Leavitt's heels clicked sharply against the marble as she entered, her gaze brushing over the room, calculating, controlled. "That's odd," whispered her aide just behind her. "Why are the press here?" "They weren't invited," Karoline replied under her breath, eyes locking briefly on the bench. "But someone made sure they knew." Chief Justice John Roberts sat motionless, already robed, already watching. His expression was blank, unreadable. The silence in the room was not casual. It was curated. "Please approach," the clerk announced. She moved to the table, laying her briefcase down. She hadn't opened it yet. There hadn't been time. The whole room had skipped the rhythm of normal hearings. No chatter, no warm-ups. Roberts leaned forward. "We're proceeding now." Karoline blinked. "Your Honor, with respect, I haven't—" "The matter is clear," he cut in. "Section 204 of the Federal Communications Act has been violated. The court imposes a $50,000 fine, effective immediately." There was no introduction, no evidence presented, no motion made. The courtroom gasped. "Objection, Your Honor," Karoline said calmly, rising halfway. "I haven't been given the chance to respond, nor has the complaint been reviewed." Robert's voice dropped in pitch. "This court doesn't entertain political theatre, Miss Leavitt." "This isn't theatre. It's due process," she answered, meeting his gaze. "You've made a ruling without so much as a sentence of evidence." Roberts stared her down. "You are fined. This hearing is concluded." "No," she said simply. A low murmur ran through the gallery. She stayed on her feet, hands at her sides, her breath steady. Every camera caught the moment. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes, those didn't blink. "Let the record show," she said, voice calm but resonant, "that this court issued a judgment with no presented evidence, no witness, no legal argument, and no chance for defense." "You will be seated," Roberts snapped. "I will be heard," she answered. Reporters were scribbling, typing. Phones were raised. The moment was no longer confined to the marble walls. It was streaming. A junior clerk whispered urgently to the judge. Roberts ignored it. "Miss Leavitt, silence is in your best interest." "That's exactly why I won't be silent," she said. "You're out of line." "No, Your Honor," Karoline replied. "What's out of line is ruling without due process. What's out of line is abusing authority to deliver a political message disguised as justice." His gavel struck once, loud and hollow. "This is contempt of court." "Contempt only exists where justice exists," she said coldly. "I see neither here." A hush dropped over the room. Robert's jaw tensed. "You're risking your position, your career, everything." She tilted her head, slightly. "Then I'm in the right place." The cameras caught every word. The tension in the room was electric now, every breath tight. From the gallery, a voice whispered, "Did she just defy the Chief Justice?" "She's crazy," someone muttered. "No," said another. "She's right." The silence swelled. Again. Karoline stood perfectly still, eyes on Roberts, unmoving. She didn't shout. She didn't falter. She just held her ground with a presence that filled the room more than the gavel had. Chief Justice Roberts leaned back slowly, steepling his fingers. "You're creating a spectacle," she smiled faintly. "No, Your Honor. I'm shining a light." Roberts didn't respond. For the first time, he looked unsure. Karoline spoke again, slowly. "If this court truly values law over power, you'll allow a defense. If not, then we'll all know what this was really about." The silence now was not confusion. It was realization. Cameras panned from her to the bench, from the press table to the shocked faces in the gallery. In that stillness, Roberts spoke. "The court will recess." Karoline didn't sit. She didn't move. A door creaked open behind. The bench, the gavel still untouched. Roberts vanished behind it. The reporters whispered like wind through leaves, and Karoline remained standing, frozen, determined, unbroken. The cameras stayed on her. "You cannot fine a citizen without due process," Karoline said clearly. "Federal Communications Act or not, you skipped every legal step." Roberts didn't look up from his notes. "The court has discretion, not above the Constitution." She placed a sheet on the desk before her. Citizens United v. FEC. The Supreme Court affirmed that speech cannot be punished based on assumption. "That case dealt with campaign finance," he replied flatly. "The principle is the same. Speech, media, and government overreach," Karoline pressed. "Texas versus Johnson. An individual was fined for symbolic speech. The court called it unconstitutional." "You're not arguing precedent. You're performing," Roberts snapped. "This isn't your press room, Miss Leavitt." "It's a courtroom," she said, holding his gaze. "Which makes your performance more dangerous." The gallery stirred. Reporters whispered. One held up a phone as live stream comments poured in. "She's quoting Supreme Court decisions. She's unraveling him." Roberts set his pen down, hard. "You're trying to create a spectacle." "No, Your Honor," Karoline said calmly. "I'm pointing out the lack of process. No evidence, no documents, no opening statements." "Your violations are clear," he said. "Says who? An investigator's opinion?" Her voice didn't rise, but each word struck sharper. "No timestamp, no photo, no sworn statement." He leaned forward. "You are not above the law." "And neither are you," she answered quickly. "Judicial authority must be based on facts, not frustration." A burst of notifications lit up across the gallery, tweets from legal scholars, video clips already circulating. She just cited Citizens United in real time. Brilliant. Is Roberts losing control? Behind the bench, a clerk leaned toward the Chief Justice and whispered. Roberts' jaw clenched. "You will respect this court," he said, ignoring the suggestion. "I respect the law," Karoline said. "That's why I'm here, standing, still waiting to be heard." "Your arguments," he growled, "have no bearing on this case." She held up another paper. "Tinker versus Des Moines. Students retained their rights in school. The ruling said, neither students nor teachers shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gate." "So tell me, Your Honor, do public servants shed theirs at the courthouse door?" A wave of murmurs passed through the spectators. "She's framing him," someone whispered. "She's turning it into a lesson," another replied. Roberts didn't respond immediately. His fingers tapped the desk once, twice. Karoline stepped forward. "This is not about one ruling. It's about setting a precedent where rulings are issued without record, defense, or review." "I see what this is," he said finally. "A media stunt?" "No," she replied. "This is a warning. If this goes unchallenged, what's next?" "More typing, more flashes from cameras." "You speak of precedent," Roberts said, "but you conveniently ignore that courts manage their own order." "Order is not a substitute for justice," Karoline replied, "and silence is not consent." He stood abruptly. "Recess for 10 minutes. As he turned, the side door opened. A second figure entered. Older, measured, black robe crisp, eyes sharp. "Judge Coleman," someone muttered. Karoline's expression didn't change, but her hands stiffened just slightly. Roberts didn't introduce him. He just walked out. Coleman stepped forward, remaining behind the bench. The murmurs died instantly. Karoline's aide leaned in. "He brought backup," Karoline whispered. "He's losing grip." On screen, news anchors cut in. "Breaking Roberts. Brings in federal judge mid-hearing. Signals legal crisis." Coleman glanced toward Karoline. His face was unreadable. The courtroom had shifted. So had the stakes. She quoted Texas versus Johnson live, without notes. Roberts looked like he wanted to vanish. She's trending. By mid-morning, Karoline Leavitt's name was everywhere, on cable news tickers, in YouTube, reaction thumbnails, buried. under hashtags like Karoline Leavitt vs Roberts and Due Process Matters. She didn't even raise her voice, a CNN anchor said. That's what made it cut deeper. On X, her clipped quote, "Order is not a substitute for justice," hit 1 million views in under 30 minutes. Inside a quiet holding room near the courthouse, Karoline sat with her phone in one hand and her aide pacing beside her. "There, calling you the velvet guillotine," he muttered, reading his screen. "Fox is spinning it as a patriot moment. MSNBC says you hijacked the bench." She didn't look up. "Both are wrong. Still, you've got half the internet calling you a hero and the other half a traitor," she said calmly. "Which means I did something right." Her phone buzzed again. Another notification. Then another. "Senator Haskins just reposted your video," her aide said, and tagged it with, "Finally, someone asked real questions in a courtroom." "Add that to the list of things I didn't ask for," Karoline muttered. He hesitated. "Should we release a statement?" She finally looked at him. "No grandstanding, just clarity." He nodded. "Got it." She tapped a few words into her phone. "A courtroom should be a place for facts, not fear. The law protects all, especially when it's inconvenient." She posted it without ceremony. The media machine churned louder. An hour later, NewsNation released a leaked internal memo. Judge Coleman had not been scheduled for the hearing. He was summoned mid-session at Roberts's request. A reporter broke the story, Liv. If accurate, this suggests Roberts knew he was losing narrative control, that he needed someone else to keep it from falling apart. The phrase, narrative control, spread like fire. In a hotel suite across town, a cable host prepped for his evening show. "She's dangerous," his producer said, calm, clean, and informed. "She's not dangerous," the host replied. "She's skilled." Back at the courthouse, Karoline scrolled past a clip from 2 years ago, her behind the White House podium, brushing off a hostile question with a smile. "You don't answer lies with silence," she'd said. Her style then, sharp, loyal, unmeasured. She remembered the smirks from the press corps, the doubt, the endless need to prove she wasn't just another talking head. Now, in the eye of a legal storm, those same skills returned. "She knows the press better than they know themselves," whispered her aide. "Every tweet she posts feels like it's 5 moves ahead." "I'm not playing chess," she replied. "You sure?" She paused, then answered, "I'm protecting the board." Another ping. A headline. "Leavitt's calm evisceration of judicial abuse stuns legal world." A video. Roberts blinking hard as she spoke. Coleman entering with slow, thunderous silence. The internet declared it a takedown. The court, a theatre. The judge, a tyrant. But behind every viral clip, Karoline kept her eyes steady. She knew the cost of moments like these. She put her phone down. "Cancel the next interview," she said. "You sure? NBC wants 10 minutes. National." "Too noisy," she replied. "Truth gets drowned when the mic gets passed too fast." Then, another notification. This one different. No handle, no sender. Just a line of text. "Stop talking, or everything comes out." She stared at the screen. "Everything?" her aide asked, reading over her shoulder. Karoline's voice was low. "That's not a threat," he frowned. "Then what is it?" She locked the phone. "A sign," she said. "The truth's finally shaking someone." "Close the door," Roberts said quietly. The agent obeyed, locking it behind him. Inside the dim briefing room, only a single desk lamp cast light across the papers on the table. "We need containment," Roberts said. "This woman is escalating it." "She's gathering support," said the operative. The clip of her, quoting precedent, has reached 7 million views. "She's weaponizing the Constitution for performance," Roberts muttered. "We need to bury this. Procedure, not politics." "What do you suggest?" the agent asked. Roberts slid a folder across the desk. "Flood it with jargon, transfer jurisdiction, delay rulings. Bureaucracy is the oldest smokescreen. The agent nodded. We can stall, but it won't make her stop. Then we'll make her irrelevant, Robert said. Fast. Across the city, Karoline sat in a quiet office, surrounded by open files. Her legal advisor leaned on the edge of the desk, arms crossed. This isn't just about you anymore, he said. If you leak this, it becomes war. Karoline didn't answer. She held a document in her hand, eyes focused. 8 cases, she said softly. All with fines issued before hearings, all without evidence, and his signature on every one. Roberts. Signs thousands of documents. It could be routine. Look at the timing, she said, flipping pages. Each signature came after the complaint, but before the hearing was scheduled. He hesitated. You're saying he decided before anyone walked into the room? I'm saying he's not interested in the law, she said, only control. He walked closer. Karoline, if you leak this, you won't just be challenging a judge. You'll be accusing the Chief Justice of the United States of corruption. I'm accusing him of certainty without facts. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled slightly against the pages. You don't have whistleblower protection, he warned. Then I'll use sunlight, she replied. It burns just as well, he shook his head. This could destroy your career, she looked up. So could silence. Her phone buzzed. A text. Another anonymous number. Don't test us. You won't like what we find. She showed it to him. He sighed. They're digging. Let them, she said. They'll only find truth. He sat down slowly. You're making enemies. I already had them. He leaned forward. You're not bulletproof, Karoline. Don't pretend you are. She exhaled. I'm not. I'm just tired of pretending they are. Silence settled in the room. He stared at her. If you're doing this, do it right. I will. Then make it clean. Make it legal. She nodded, eyes back on the file. And make it loud. He picked up a page. These records go back how far? 7 years. Same pattern, same judge, same silence. You really believe? He thinks no one would notice. No, she said. I think he believes no one would dare speak. She pulled out her laptop. What are you doing? He asked. Uploading. His voice dropped. Now? She paused. If not now, then when? He didn't stop her. A moment later, she clicked the final key. The file went live. The message was, short. The public deserves transparency. Here is a list of fines issued without evidence, all approved by one man. She closed the laptop. Outside, the wind rattled the glass. Inside, the silence was no longer hesitation. It was resolve. She's not a whistleblower. She's a provocateur, barked the host on EmpireNet. This is grandstanding wrapped in legal jargon. America doesn't need courtroom drama from a political operative, said another anchor, waving a printed headline. The Trump mouthpiece strikes again. She's dangerous, a commentator added. She isn't seeking justice. She's auditioning for relevance. Karoline stared at the screen. The news cycle spun like a weapon. Turn it off, she said quietly. Her aide grabbed the remote. They're all running the same clips, same quotes, out of context. They're reading from a script, she replied, and he's holding the pen. Another network ran a segment titled Disinformation Queen Leavitt's Legal Meltdown. They're painting you like a threat to order, he said. Even using old footage. That clip from your WH briefing in 22. Karoline's jaw clenched. That clip wasn't even about the courts. They're not after context. No, she said. They're after silence. In a small production trailer across DC, a producer flipped her laptop toward a young journalist. Check this, she whispered. None of the networks mentioned Coleman entering the courtroom. He raised an eyebrow. They're erasing him from the footage. Only one camera angle, the wide shot. No pan, no acknowledgement. He leaned forward. That's deliberate. Later that afternoon, the independent outlet Wire Truth published its headline. What EmpireNet didn't show you, a second judge walked in. Social platforms caught fire again. They cut the camera when Coleman entered. They called her unhinged, but never showed the fine had no evidence. At a courthouse cafe, Karoline scrolled silently. Her thumb hovered over a fresh message. Ignore them. We see you. Her legal advisor sat across from her. He's desperate. This is narrative war now. He's making it personal, she said. It isn't personal anymore, he replied. He's not just attacking you. He's warning others. She looked up. You think this is about silencing future dissent? He's saying, challenge me, and I'll end you publicly. Her eyes hardened. Then let's make that message cost him. He pulled a folder from his bag. I've been tracking the broadcast edits. Red lines, shared talking points between networks. None signed, but all identical. Coordinated smear, she said flatly. Proof of narrative control. She paused. Do we go public? He hesitated. This could burn them, she nodded. Then strike the match. Hours later, Wire Truth released the leaked red lines. Every major outlet implicated. Hashtags erupted. Media muzzle. What they didn't show. Roberts is playing defense, someone tweeted. And Leavitt's holding the high ground. That evening, as anchors scrambled to recover, a different kind of message landed. A press bulletin from the federal court. Judge Samuel Coleman has officially requested full documentation of the A. Leavitt v. FCC case for federal review. Karoline read it 3 times before setting the paper down. He made it official, she whispered. Her advisor smiled. Now it's not just a headline. No, she said, her voice steady. Now it's history. Mr. Baxter, you filed the complaint against Miss Leavitt, correct? The investigator adjusted his collar. Yes, I did. Karoline sat still, eyes focused, posture firm. Her legal advisor whispered, watch his hands. Yes, she said softly. He's nervous. In your report, Coleman continued, you stated the violation was clear and deliberate. What evidence did you collect? There was no physical evidence, Your Honor, Baxter admitted. No photos, no recordings, no witness statements? No, sir. A ripple passed through the courtroom. Then what was the basis of your report? Coleman asked. My training. My judgment, Baxter replied. I've worked in this field for over 20 years. That's not the question, Karoline murmured. Instinct? Coleman pressed. Is that what you're saying? Yes, Baxter said. Sometimes experience tells you what a document can't. Experience, Coleman repeated flatly, is not evidence. A murmur spread. Across the gallery, Roberts shifted uncomfortably. Karoline leaned to her advisor. This is it. Don't blink, he whispered. Mr. Baxter, Coleman said, voice sharp. Are you aware that federal enforcement actions require corroborated documentation? I thought my judgment would suffice, he said quietly. Karoline rose. Permission? To address the witness, Coleman nodded. Proceed. Mr. Baxter, she said clearly, you fined me $50,000 based on a feeling. It wasn't a feeling, it was a professional assessment. Did you include any timestamps? Diagrams? Logs? No. She stepped closer. Was anyone else present? No. Did you request a peer review, internal audit, anything at all to verify your claim? Baxter hesitated. No. I acted within scope. She turned to the gallery. So we're here today because one man's assumption became policy. The murmurs grew louder. Karoline's tone dropped. Do you know James Carter, Mr. Baxter? No. He was a veteran. Owned a garage in Boise. You fined him $12,000 for signage non-compliance. Baxter shifted in his seat. 3 months later, your department admitted the rule hadn't even been enacted. He lost his garage, his home. He now lives in a shelter for displaced vets. Coleman raised his hand. That story is verified. Karoline nodded. Yes, Your Honor, documentation available. Coleman turned to Baxter. Do you remember that case? I process hundreds of reports a year. That's not an answer. Baxter's eyes dropped. I don't recall. The courtroom fell. Silent. Karoline stepped back. And still, you say instinct is enough. Her advisor leaned close. You just cracked him open. Robert's knuckles tightened around the bench. Coleman closed the folder in front of him. This court will recess for 20 minutes. As the gavel struck, Baxter stood slowly, shoulders sagging. The crowd whispered. Karoline stayed still, eyes forward. Her memory drifted. James Carter, smiling through pain, fixing cars for veterans for free. That day, watching him close the door of a foreclosed shop, something inside her shifted. She looked up again, resolve sharpened. This wasn't about a courtroom anymore. It was about the quiet victims who never made it to one. Order, Roberts said, voice strained as he rapped the gavel once. Let's return to the matter at hand. Karoline stood calmly, hands clasped, eyes focused. Coleman sat motionless beside Roberts, unreadable. This courtroom, Roberts began, has been overtaken by theatrics and political posturing. Karoline didn't flinch. Or by truth. Roberts turned sharply. Miss Leavitt, this is not a campaign stage. Neither is it your throne, she answered. We are bound by the law, not your preferences. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Every camera was rolling. Social media feeds buzzed. Coleman's voice broke the tension. Enough. I've heard all I need. Roberts tried to interject, but Coleman raised a hand. This case has become bigger than process, Coleman said. It has become a referendum on power and how it is used. I've followed due course, Roberts insisted. No, Coleman replied. You've mistaken authority for evidence. Gasps echoed through the room. The ruling you gave lacked foundation, Coleman continued. There was no documentation, no substantiated claim, just enforcement by instinct. The gallery went silent. Karoline didn't smile. She didn't move. Coleman's gaze turned to her. Miss Leavitt, you stood in silence when others would have shouted. You pressed for truth without theatrics, and you let the law, not your voice, do the speaking. She exploited public sympathy, Roberts said quickly. She turned a minor fine into a public crisis. Then you should have had better evidence to withstand it, Coleman replied. The hashtag #Leavitt vs Power flashed across live streams. Anchors whispered behind off-camera mics. Commentators online flooded threads. Freedom of speech is on trial. This isn't a case, it's a reckoning. She just stood there and dismantled a courtroom. Given the lack of evidence, Coleman announced, this court vacates the $50,000 fine issued under Section 204. Another wave of murmurs surged through the room. Some reporters typed furiously. Others just stared. Let the record reflect, Coleman continued, that personal authority never outweighs constitutional process. Roberts sat rigid, lips tight, eyes cast downward. Karoline stood still. No grin, no fist raised, no celebration. Her advisor leaned toward her. You did it, she whispered back. It wasn't about winning. He looked puzzled. Then what? She turned to face the courtroom. About showing them they could speak. Coleman closed his folder. Court adjourned. The gavel struck once. Roberts didn't move. Cameras stayed locked on him, but the moment had passed him by. As Karoline stepped away from the bench, a reporter shouted, Miss Leavitt, do you have a statement? She paused briefly. Let the evidence speak, she said. It always should have. Then she walked out, calm, composed, and forever changed. She wasn't angry. That's what made it hit harder, said the host on a late-night panel. She stood still and dismantled power with words, replied another. That's not defiance, that's precision. The coverage swirled. Some outlets softened, others doubled down. She bypassed courts and weaponized sympathy, claimed a syndicated columnist. She reminded people they had a voice, said a civil liberties lawyer live on air. Karoline sat in a quiet studio, far from the bright sets of mainstream networks. The interviewer across from her adjusted a lapel mic. Thank you for choosing us, he said quietly. I didn't want headlines, she replied. I wanted stories. The camera rolled. "You've been flooded with requests," he began. "Why this one?" "Because you asked about the people, not the platform." He nodded. "Let's talk about them." "James Carter," she said, "was a veteran, ran a garage, got fined for a zoning error that didn't exist. He lost everything." She paused. "Maria Delgado," she continued, "an electrician for 15 years. One day her license was invalid, overnight. She never got a clear answer." The interviewer listened, silent. "William Hayes," she said. "Retired trucker, built a fence. It crossed an invisible line. He was fined twice, for the fence and for removing it." The host blinked. "Twice?" She nodded. "He tore it down himself. They fined him again, because some posts were still in the ground." The clip was short, but it went viral. "You don't need to be loud to start a revolution," she said, at the end. "You just need to stand." That line circled the globe in hours. On Capitol Hill, staffers circulated memos. Emergency review requested. Fines by discretion. In state legislatures, questions were asked on record. What oversight exists for non-evidence-based penalties? How many rulings were issued without documentation? Civil liberties groups filed motions in 3 states by noon. Karoline's inbox overflowed. Law schools requested guest lectures. Community leaders invited her to speak. Advocacy groups quoted her filings. Her advisor scanned headlines. CNN just ran a segment called "The Leavitt Precedent." She looked up. "They hated me last week." "They still don't love you," he said. "But they can't ignore you." She smiled faintly. "That's enough." Outside, a protest formed. Not in her name, but in the name of due process. Banners read, "Prove it or drop it evidence." Over Egonaut above the Lawin offices across the country, agency heads met behind closed doors. What if they find more? Do we scrub the files? Do we wait until the noise fades? But the noise didn't fade. It sharpened, and at the center of it, Karoline stayed calm. Not loud, just standing. "You're in the curriculum now," her advisor said, holding up a screenshot from a law school syllabus. Week 10. Judicial discretion and the Leavitt case. Karoline smiled faintly. "Strange seeing your name next to case law. It's happening everywhere," he added. "Panels, podcasts, policy briefings. I never asked to be a symbol. Symbols don't ask, they emerge." At a university lecture hall, a professor pointed to a slide. She didn't shout. She questioned. She demanded documentation. That's how systems change, quietly, persistently. In a student debate club, a young woman raised her hand. Was she loyal to Trump or to the Constitution? The moderator replied, "Both, maybe." That's what made her unpredictable. In a city council meeting, someone quoted her, "Let the evidence speak. It always should have." Across state houses, bills appeared. The Due Process Protection Act, the Leavitt Amendment. Language echoing her courtroom words. She exposed a flaw, said a civil liberties attorney on a national stream, and then forced the system to admit it. Not all praise was kind. She made it political, a pundit claimed. She played martyr to dodge scrutiny, another added. She grandstanded for influence. Karoline ignored them all. She turned down speaking engagements, declined documentaries, and blocked 7 publishing deals. "I don't want to sell it," she said. "Then what do you want?" her advisor asked. "For it to hold," she said quietly. "So no one else has to fight that fight again." One evening, walking alone, she passed the federal courthouse on Constitution Avenue. The cameras were gone. The marble steps sat empty. She stopped, just for a moment. There was no crowd, no attention, but she felt it, the echo of what had happened inside. Her voice, her stand, their silence. A woman exiting the building glanced at her, unaware of who she was. Karoline smiled. That was the point. She didn't need to be remembered by name, just by principle. She walked on. She didn't need the bench to deliver justice. She just needed the truth and a voice that wouldn't bow.